Hello and welcome to a socially isolated episode of Tolarian Community College. As you can see, this episode may as well have been called The Empty Chair because our guest, Blake Rasmussen of Wizards of the Coast, could not be here in person today, but we had planned to have a follow-up interview that would have already been up. But due to the current global crisis, we, of course, are both restricted to being in our self-isolation. And we've decided, rather than indefinitely delay the critical interview follow-up to the announcement of Secret Lair Ultimate Edition, otherwise known as Secret Lair Fetchlands, that we're going to go ahead and do a good old-fashioned social distance interview with my critical questions about this product. So just first off, right off the bat, Blake, thank you for doing quite a lot to arrange this teleconference so that we could actually have the follow-up episode as planned.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not ideal, but we got our streaming from home setup going here so that we can do a lot more talking to people well isolated. So I was happy to set this up in a way that we could.
So Blake and I recently did an announcement video where we talked about two new products, one of which was Secret Lair Ultimate Edition, which was a reprinting, although I might use air quotes on the term reprinting, of the 5 enemy Fetchlands. And in that announcement video, I had agreed to ask questions pertaining to product details and to save critical questions for this episode, which again was supposed to be a sit down. We're doing the teleconference here. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with that. Before we do, I just want to make a kind of general statement. I understand, and I know that Blake and Wizards of the Coast and everyone involved understands that this is a very frightening and uncertain time given the global crisis that's going on. Wizards of the Coast is in the middle of making a series of announcements about what they are doing to help local game stores. And by the time this video comes out, there will probably have been several more announcements that I don't currently know about. This episode is just about Fetchlands Reprints. And I care very deeply about local game stores. And I've only seen one announcement so far. And I already have probably an hour's worth of questions that I would like to ask of Wizards of the Coast about helping local game stores in response to that. But Blake tells me they're not done announcing. And by the time this is up, there will have been several more. So we're going to wait and let them finish talking, in other words. And then if Blake is willing, or someone else from Wizards of the Coast is willing, I invite them to sit down for a critical discussion about the value of supporting local game stores in general, and especially in this critical time. But this video is about Secret Lair Ultimate Edition and some concerns that I and the community have about this product. So thank you for willing to have this frank discussion with us, Blake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you for doing this too. One, I thought the announcement video went over very well, but you personally got a lot of flack for it. And I hope that people stop shooting the messenger on these things. That was you sharing something with the community, and the fact that people were upset with you about sharing it was unfortunate. And I hope that they see this video for what it is, which is you've already used air quotes once, so we're off to a good start.
Yes. So I think the first and probably most important question about Secret Lair Ultimate Edition is you said that the price was a little bit more than $165 in our video, and yet every previous Secret Lair that's been out has been in the price range of $25 to $50 or $24.99 to $49.99. I do not believe there's been a single Secret Lair that has been above the $50 price range. Many have been half of that at $25. And yet this one is going to be a little bit more than 165. It contains the same number of cards on average as every previous secret layer, which is 5. There are 5 cards in this secret layer. There were 5 cards in most of the previous secret layers. There's been a little fluctuation, but for some of them had 4, etc. But we can say an average of 5 cards. There's been no change in the amount of cardboard that is in this product in terms of the cards being reprinted. How can you justify such an overwhelming price increase on same name, same content sort of product?
So there's a lot to unpack in that question. So I'm going to kind of roll through some things. Feel free to jump in and ask questions as I talk through some of it. First off, I'm fully aware that some of the answers I'm going to give now aren't going to satisfy a lot of people. We're very aware, and we started seeing this with Mythic Edition back in the fall, that there's a certain reaction to higher price point items that I don't want to say caught us off guard, because it didn't, but was probably more than we anticipated. And so what we've seen is that high price items, especially as we put out more of them, are seeing more of a negative reaction. And so we're definitely looking at that and watching it and making decisions around that. So I'm fully aware that almost no matter what answer I give, some people are still going to be upset. And that's okay. What I am looking to do is kind of take you through some of what we think about and some of what these things are and aren't. So let's start with secret layers and their pricing. So secret layer pricing so far, yes, has been in the $24.99 to $49.99 range. But it's meant to be a secret layer was envisioned as this sort of flexible thing that we can deploy here and there where it made sense and do cool things. So one of the difficulties in our normal printing process in things like our large set releases like the Theros Beyond Deaths, and even things like Mystery Booster, is it's a long iterative process that takes anywhere from months and months to years and years. So Secret Layer is meant to be flexible. Now, what this means is that at some point we will try out higher priced SKUs, and I can also, I'll give you a little preview here. We're going to try lower priced SKUs too. So that's one thing.
Lower priced on
than $25.
Right, but lower priced on cards that are in demand for reprints, or lower priced on tokens.
That would be a hint about what's in this secret layer. You'll see. It's a fun thing.
Okay.
More information on that will come up. But the other aspect of this is one of the points you made in there, and I think one of the things you were trying to get at right there, is the number of cards. And people, one of the big responses we got with Secret Lair Ultimate Edition is it's the same number of cards. Or we announced Chandra Ultimate Spellbook on the same day. It's a fewer number of cards. Cardboard takes the same amount to make whatever the picture is on it. So a lot of people have this notion that it's just this cardboard. And I honestly, I will tell you right now, I do not know what it costs to print this much cardboard. I don't know the physical printing price of that. But let's just say it's $1 for the sake of rounding and me being not great at math. So if it costs $1 to print a physical card, that is not how much it costs from start to finish to produce whatever that set is. So we have to pay, we like to. We pay artists, we pay graphic designers, we pay distributors, we pay all kinds of people who are involved, the designers on our staff, the game designers, all sorts of things go into what it costs to produce a set. It's not just the price of cardboard. And then you have to think about economies of scale. So yes, a booster pack might have 15 cards in it versus 5 cards in this, but we're printing millions of those booster packs, which gets discounts along the way. The and I'm going to say I don't understand all of it. I'm not in logistics. I'm not in printing. But the basic fact of it is that the price of the cardboard is not how much it actually costs to produce a card. So saying this one has 5 in it, this one has 8 in it, isn't an exact, it's never going to be an exact comparison. That said, I completely understand how that appears, especially doing Chandra's Spellbook next to Secret Lair Ultimate Edition, where one has 8 cards, one has 5 cards, and they're vastly different price points.
And also in the Chandra Spellbook, you have new art, new graphic design, even in the cards that are using the original art. A new frame has been commissioned. I imagine it's the same, or a similar amount of team effort into designing those frames and such. There's a foil included in that, so it's even more cards. Spellbook is almost twice as many cards at $20 versus slightly more, a little bit more than $165. And everything that you're saying right now, it sounds like it's going in a very opposite direction of the 5 cards that are reprinted in Secret Lair Ultimate Edition are some of the most in-demand cards right now. So why would we ever sell those for $20? Is that a fair reaction? That these are the cards people need to play the game more so than any card in Chandra's signature spellbook? Because while certainly there's, like cards like I need Past in Flames to play Storm in Modern, but I don't need Past in Flames to play Azurius Control in Modern or any other deck, host of name 10 other decks in Modern. I don't need that card for those decks, but for all of those decks, I need I don't need, but I feel that I need the Fetchlands.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going to take it. Yeah, that's where I'm going to take exception with using need for the Fetchlands. But I think we'll come back to that. I don't think that's the last time you're going to ask me that question. I will take exception with need, but let's talk about the core of that question, which you got at early, which was demand. So here's the part where I'm going to give the answer that I think a lot of people are not going to like, but it's simply the truth, and that's all I'm here to share. We have a lot of very smart economists on our staff who work on pricing our products, and as with any product, and this isn't just Magic, just any product anywhere, if you underprice something or overprice something, you see bad behaviors in the marketplace. The answer that a lot of people aren't going to like is that our economists always seek to right-size these products, and they determine where price meets demand. And of course, supply is in there, and I took Economics 101, so supply and demand curves and all that jazz. I don't understand that stuff, but the core of the message is that consumer demand is what drives a lot of our prices. Of course, there are other aspects to that. There is how much did we have to pay the artists? How much do we need to pay distributors? How much graphic artists? All the way down the line, how much do these things cost? That is certainly a component, but so is consumer demand and where the market should expect to settle on a product like these. If we undershoot or overshoot, we've seen this with our products before, it leads to bad behavior.
Okay. So you're referring to if you've undershot with a product, such as I think a really good example might be From the Vault that you undershot on saying $40 on, and then the bad behavior is that the people it'll get bought up and then resold for 10 times that or 5 times that or significantly higher. Is that what you mean by bad behavior?
So for a lot of business reasons, I can't actually get into a lot of what that bad behavior is, but I think players understand what that generally means.
I've always wondered on that, not to go off on a tangent, but I've always wondered on that idea of bad behavior, isn't that just an indicator that you need to print more supply to the demand, that it isn't that you're not charging enough, it's that you're not printing enough? For example, you're only offering a maximum of 10 of these to stores, and that seems like that is encouraging bad behavior on, quite frankly, the supplier's part, that you're going to perhaps point a finger at stores and say, well, look at them. Now they're selling it for a lot more than 165. what are we to do? Maybe online sales is the way to go. Things like this. When it's simply a matter of, well, there's more than 10 customers in the store. There's far more than 10 customers in a local game store. If the demand is that high, shouldn't the supply be greater rather than the price? Than the price.
Yeah. So let me get, because that's a great question. The limited 10 copies was another big point of contention. But I think this is one of those areas where we can do a better job of kind of educating the public in the ways that we can about what it means for one store to have up to 10 copies of something. So when we first debuted Secret Lair, we got a lot of feedback that why aren't you including stores? You need to include stores. Stores should be included. That's where this comes in. And then, of course, when we did 10 copies, people were like, oh, I know more than 10 people who are going to buy it at our local store. But that sort of discrepancy highlights part of the issue with doing products like these in stores and why we started with direct to consumer and then moved to stores rather than the other way around. So let me give you one base fact that is probably going to blow some people's minds, or that may be too strong, but it might change how people look at this. 10 copies per store, or up to 10 copies. The number of copies of Secret Lair Ultimate Edition that will be distributed will be more in the wild than almost every Secret Lair we've put out so far. And those were all printed demand. And as you said, a lower price point. So there are going to be more of these in the world in total than, for example, Kaleidoscope Killers. Mm-hmm. So this is one of those areas where 10 per store seems really small, but in aggregate, it's actually a fairly large number. And that's just people don't know that scale. They don't know how many WPN stores there are in the world. They don't know how many of these we're printing, and that's purposeful. We're not going to share those exact numbers. But to give you an idea of scale, 10 per store or up to 10 per store is probably more in the wild than people think.
I go ahead.
But 10 sounds low. So I totally get why people have that reason.
I believe you that there is more that 10 to every store in the world that wants 10 or that is able to participate, yada, yada, yada. I believe you that that's more than dramatically more than the amount of Kaleidoscope Killers. But that does not mean that it isn't low. It is reflective, perhaps, of the fact that I don't need 4 copies of every card in Kaleidoscope Killers in order to play a deck in one of several formats, popular formats in this game. So there's a huge difference in the contents of Kaleidoscope Killers than the contents of Secret Lair Ultimate Edition. I only need 1 copy of each of the cards in Kaleidoscope Killers to helm my commander deck, as none of them are played, to my knowledge, in formats such as Modern or Legacy. Those were commander cards. I need 1 copy, and I may not play with those commanders, and so that may not be for me. But if I am in any aspect involved in the entirety of the format of Legacy, or the entirety of the format of Modern, or even a multitude of formats such as Canadian Highlander or even Commander, Fetchlands are something that I want copies of. And outside of Canadian Highlander and Commander, I definitely want more than 1 copy. So the demand is exponentially higher. So that supply increase may be higher, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's enough. And if bad behavior is going to result with 10 copies per store, which it surely you'd agree certainly will result in that. Surely you agree that this will, people are not, I can't go into my local game store and get this today. I can't today because we're in a global crisis.
You certainly can't today.
But people already contacted their local game stores, and the second this was announced, their 10 copies were sold, and many game stores are going to engage in the bad behavior of saying they're sold, and then they're going to be resold by the game store owners who are in dire straits. And I don't want to get into that conversation, but the bad behavior you mentioned is already happening because of that 10 copies. Why can't this just be print to demand like every other copy, but in local game stores? Couldn't a store take pre-orders for as many copies as their customers wanted, send that information to you, and receive that many copies, and then everybody? And if that was announced, knowing that it was print to demand, that every store could take as many pre-orders, just like with a secret lair, I mean, the infrastructure's in place. You're just shipping it to the store instead of to the person. Then I could call up my local game store and say, yeah, I'd like a play set of them at a little bit more than 165. Why does it have to be restricted to 10?
Okay, so there's
I'm sorry. I should be. I do apologize. But yes. Yeah.
No, that's okay. You have many thoughts about this, and so does the community, and so we want to try to address as many of them as possible. So I'm gonna try to pick through some of that. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between shipping to stores versus shipping direct to consumers. That I think will get towards answering some of what you're talking about, though certainly not all of it. So when we sell products through local game stores, they first go through distributors. So you'll notice that with Secret Lair products thus far, we've been announcing them like 2 weeks-ish before they go on sale. I think one of them we may have done less than that. And I think Tholium we might have announced maybe a week and a half. Anyway, 2 weeks is kind of what we're looking at for announcing these things. Secret Lair Ultimate Edition doesn't hit stores till the end of May, and we've already announced it. And even though your question wasn't about announcements, it speaks towards something very important. Our announcement timing often is pegged off when we have to ship things in order to get them to distributors and so that stores can place their orders. There's a significant process that is not nearly as fast as clicking on a website and doing a number and then printing and shipping. So what you see is that the process for putting things in local game stores, that alone takes weeks. Okay, that's just a logistical background thing that anyone who deals in shipping or ordering would understand. The other portion of this is if you look at secret layers that are print to demand, is that what we've done, so we call them time box to demand, but what that has meant so far is that we print X number. And the first people who order those X copies get them not immediately, but like within the first week usually. And then everything else it takes up to 6 to 8 weeks. So this is where we see a lot of complaints of, my neighbor already got their Theros stargazing. I haven't received mine. What's going on? And it's because the ones that actually are print to demand take another 6 to 8 weeks. That's just the whole printing process from start to finish, plus shipping, packaging, all that stuff, 6 to 8 weeks. Now, if you were to layer that on top of the process of stores ordering and shipping to distributors, which is a couple months, keep in mind, you're now talking about a process that would take from ordering to actually getting the product upwards of 6 months. And again, logistics is not my strong suit, so I don't know. There could be ways to shave that off. Someone's going to comment on this video and say, hey, I work in logistics. We could do this in 4 months or something like that. The point is that print to demand by ordering through stores is not as easy, and it takes much longer. So you're going to see a discrepancy in when people get those products, which leads to others. That
actually that does make a lot of sense. Then how about this? Mm-hmm. I do know Wizards of the Coast works very far in the future. Is there any? I don't know how locked in things like this are, but given the community reaction already to this, given that I would wager on your end, your any feelers you would give to local game stores are likely indicating that this is 10 copies, is just sold out across the board. I would be shocked to hear that it isn't, and please feel free to shock me. But is there still time to maybe reconsider that allotment and say, you know what, Magic the Gathering has had the most explosive year of growth ever. 3 years ago, and then we topped it the next year, and then we topped it the next year. The game is bigger than ever before, more in demand than ever before. Maybe more than 10 copies is warranted. Is there any opportunity left to maybe reconsider that allotment of 10 on such an in-demand item?
The answer is probably no. But let me expand on that, because a week ago I would have said just no. No, that's not what we're doing. However, given the circumstances around COVID-19 and the effect it's had, and a lot of the stuff we're working on the background, we have been doing a lot of things that we haven't talked about yet, or maybe we have by the time this video's come out, that I would have said were impossible before. We are moving mountains behind the scenes. And a lot of that you haven't seen yet. But the things you have seen, that I know you have seen, like the online Magic Fests, the 2 Mitgo PTQs per day, arena FNMs that are connected to your stores. All of those were set up in I'm going to be a little behind the scenes speak here, in like a week. These were not things that we were, considering and like, hey, wouldn't this be cool? This is stuff that people looked at each other and said, we need to do something for the players at home. We need to do something for the stores. And so people have been moving mountains and doing amazing work behind the scenes. And there is more coming. There is more that people are working on. And so I'm not going to say no, absolutely, because I've seen people move mountains. I've seen things change, but probably also not.
Okay. All right. I had to ask on that. There's another thing I have to ask on, which is the Secret Lair Ultimate Edition box. Every single Secret Lair has been uniform in coming in this nice little compact box. A lot of players use this even as a deck storage box. I have yet to grade them in one of my
over my shoulder.
Little magnet might be nice, but otherwise, anyway, I don't want to start to get into my review. That's a different type of video of that. Again, 5 cards. And I don't have the sample because, joking aside from the announcement, you took it back. You did not say, "Hey, Professor, as a gift for doing this wonderful announcement video, here you go. It's yours to keep." You took that thing under lock and key, right back with you. Yes,
that is a sample. Yeah,
that box. Were I to hold it up, would fill the screen. That box is huge for five individual cards. Why and isn't that more expensive to ship to stores? Isn't that harder for stores to store? Why is Secret Lair Ultimate Edition not coming in the same uniform? I would imagine sending 10 of these sized boxes to every game store in the world would save on shipping and production, and wouldn't that allow you to maybe even offer it for less?
It's entirely possible. Again, that's not my strong suit. Packaging is certainly one of the aspects. Packaging, shipping, all that are certainly aspects that get thought about when price is set. And again, logistically, I could not tell you how these are getting to stores. For example, I do know we bundle a lot of shipments to stores. That's why, again, little tangent on announcements, the part of the world that I understand very well. You'll often see us preview promo cards ahead of the actual full set, as like the first thing in a set. And that's because we often bundle promo stuff with other shipments. So I have no idea if these are being bundled with other shipments or any of that sort of stuff. So I know that it's not a linear, like this box is bigger, it definitely costs more to ship. That's probably true, just because it's generally true. But I know there are efficiencies that our logistical teams work on to solve those issues. So could it cost us? Possibly. I could not in any way say how much less or what it would do.
Why such a big box? Then why? Why simply?
It's really nice.
But
that's a bit of a glib response. But now one of the things we've seen is that people are actually taking the secret layers and they're making art out of them. They're making displays of their own. So magic art's a big deal for a lot of people. I have this here, I have this here. There's more on a wall over there you can't see. And, for example, we saw, and I think this was a post on Reddit, someone made a large display of all the showcase Theros gods, all the Nyx looking gods, and it looked really cool. And so we don't produce a lot of those types of things. So this is our attempt at doing so. And even the hard cases in there are very good. I know when you were looking,
I did like the
wow,
hard cases. I'll concede that point. I liked those hard card cases.
And so, whether people display these particular cards in there or other cards, it's got 5 slots. So any cycle of 5 things, of which there are a lot in Magic, can be displayed in there. The hard cases are very nice. So we do expect some people, and I honestly have no idea. Is it a majority of people who buy this? Is it just a small percentage of people who buy this? I don't know, but we'll use these as displays of some kind, whether they're displaying these lands or other items.
Okay. So, question, I did not think to check for this when I had the sample on hand. If we remove the foam from that display box, can a cube or just a collection of sleeved cards, such as decks and just whatever, be stored and fit in that space? Was it designed so that, sleeved cards will fit comfortably in here for something such as a cube or related collection?
It wasn't designed for that. And honestly, I'm not someone who puts together packaging. I was just warned, don't pull the foam out because it would. Okay. Well, that was for us filming. They were saying, don't pull the foam out because it's not going to look pretty. There's nothing under there. There's no dividers or anything like that. So if someone were to pull the foam out and maybe scrape where the foam was stuck to the packaging, I'm sure they could use it for something. But I don't know. It
seems very large than just for displaying 5 cards. It seems like incredibly large.
That is an opinion you can have. Yep.
So I think that the fervor, and I must admit that being able to have this conversation now critically with you, I even feel a little of it myself over this, is tied not so much to a secret layer even being this expensive or limited, but to specifically it being a Fetchland secret layer. And that, in my opinion, if you want to speak of opinions, is simply because of the community need and desire for these cards. It's very reasonable to argue that Fetchlands are one of, if not the most in-demand card for reprints. Why, given, and I'm sure you have data, showing this to you, why, given all that, would you decide for a premium product with a limited printing to be the best place to reprint Fetchlands versus just putting them in a booster pack at Rare, which is how they were previously obtainable?
So best, I'm going to switch up the question a little bit, just because best sort of indicates that it's the only way. And as we said, there are more ways coming. But your question about why can't it be in a standard booster pack or in a booster pack is totally relevant and totally fair. And the answer why it can't be in a standard booster pack is Tabletop Studios seen what those standard environments look like. And honestly, Fetchlands are just not great for standard play. So that's one of the reasons that we banned them right off the bat in Pioneer, was because they've kind of come to the conclusion that they just aren't good for standard gameplay. You see a lot of things, like the last time they were in standard, we had the Khans of Tarkir standard into Zendikar, and there were Fetchlands and fetchable lands. And it led to this 4-color mess that wasn't really what Tabletop Studio wanted. So and never say never.
Khans of Tarkir is considered to be one of the most popular sets amongst players that were playing at the time. It's highly rated in polls. It was high selling. It brought Fetchlands down to an affordable price. The big issue was less those 4-color decks, I might argue, and more just that it wasn't fun to watch on coverage. But we don't have very much coverage of paper gameplay anymore, so maybe that isn't as big a problem anymore.
Had to get that one in there.
I did have to get that one in there. Yes, I did.
Fair enough.
Okay. Anyway, please continue.
It's about gameplay and Fetchland. The repeated shuffling. You have to go. Every turn it's shuffled. Decide what land you're going to get. It's not gameplay that they're super into. Now, never say never. It could end up in a standard set in the way distant future because things always change. But as of right now, they don't enjoy that for standard play, and they want to keep it out of standard play. And again, that's why they started not in the format in Pioneer. So could they be in a standard set? Could be, but it's really not something that's desirable, because what you have to think about is R&D, tabletop studio, whatever you want to call them, design sets holistically and formats holistically. And so just because a reprint is wanted doesn't mean it makes sense in a standard product. It can do things to the standard product that aren't desirable. It can do things to the format that aren't fun. And so that's actually one of the places where Secret Lair comes in, is that we can do these one of things here, one of things there, that don't have to fit in anything and that aren't restricted to the world that's being created or the format that they would be creating. So that's one of the benefits of Secret Lair.
So I appreciate the concept of, wow, Fetchlands, our team of experts who make the greatest game in the world, and that's one thing I think we can agree on, no matter what, where we sit in relation to the game table, whether you're making the cards for it or playing the cards on it or what have you. We all agree Magic's the greatest game in the world. So I have a great respect for the people that are the ones designing that. And they say, hey, we don't think Fetchlands in standard is really what we want. But there are other booster packs. There are everything from Masters sets, which we've said we won't be seeing them for with the regularity we previously saw them at, but maybe we'll see them again someday. We just had mystery boosters come out, which, hey, A+ product grade on Tolarian Community College, and I believe the community agrees with that grade. Fantastic set. There are special sets every year put out, and some of them are even offered at fair prices and printings. So why can't the Fetchlands therefore be in those? Those aren't standard.
They could. There's certainly nothing restricting them from being in a booster release. We're obviously not announcing anything like that here today, right, or anything like that. But no, there's no restriction that they couldn't be in those sorts of things. Now, again, we have to look at those sets holistically, because booster packs are still meant for drafting. Something like Mystery Booster is meant for drafting. And R&D designs sets with that in mind. And if Fetchlands fit into that, there's certainly nothing from keeping them being in a booster release sometime in the future.
Okay, but they can't be in standard. Why can't they still be in standard packs in the form of masterpieces / expeditions? In fact, the last time we were on Zendikar, we had Fetchlands reprinted in a premium form. And this was, again, almost universally praised and enjoyed. And it led to one of the best-selling sets of all time at the time, with expeditions in Battle for Zendikar. They were not part of standard. Masterpieces and expeditions are specifically not part of standard, but they're in those $4 standard packs. If we can't have them in standard, why can't we have them as masterpiece / expeditions, at the very least, when we're returning to Zendikar in a matter of months?
The answer is they could be. We don't currently do masterpieces. We kind of morphed that into booster fun with the collector boosters and the collector booster items that can be found in regular boosters. So never say never. They absolutely could be. That could be a thing we do. And it could be, it hypothetically could be a special promotion associated with a standard set. It could be something like a masterpiece. We're trying a bunch of new stuff that could be an avenue to do it.
So can I just actually ask, is it fair to say that the Magic the Gathering player population has not only grown but exploded in recent year? Is that fair for me? Do your numbers say that?
Yeah,
there's more
absolutely.
people playing Magic the Gathering today than 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. Would you agree with that? So, okay, so we agree with that. So if we agree that there are more players, then doesn't that mean that perhaps the demand for access to cards has grown with that population and player and customer growth, and therefore shouldn't the reprint policy grow or change to adapt to a larger population? So aren't we just using a reprint policy from years back that isn't reflective of how many people are currently playing this game?
So I think it's interesting because lately we've heard a lot of comments about product fatigue. But realistically, getting at the reprints issue that you're talking about, there's really only two ways to keep up with a growing population and a need for reprints. So basically what we're talking about here is new players come into the game. They were not playing the game when card X was printed. And so it's obviously much harder for them to get a hold of it because we're not printing those packs anymore. So to reprint them so that they do have access to them, there's really two ways we can go about it. We can either make all our sets reprint heavy, all our existing sets, which isn't going to happen. It's not a good experience. It's why people enjoy new worlds and new sets more than core sets, generally speaking. The other option is to do more products, some that are reprint heavy. So we come into this thing where we are addressing the reprints issue, and it's solving one problem and it seemingly creates another one. So the reprint policy has changed. Like that's why you see things like Secret Lair. That's why you see people saying, we just had this product, why are we doing another one? That's why you see things like unsanctioned, which it is super hard to reprint uncards. You want to talk about cards that are difficult to reprint. Uncards are outside of an unset, which happen every couple years, super difficult to reprint. Unsanctioned was a way to address that. So I do believe that our reprint policy has changed because we're not just dealing with 4 major releases and a Commander release every year. You even look at our Commander slate for this year. Commander Collection Green, Commander Legends, the Commander products with Zendikar, the Commander products with Ikoria, all of those are going to have some kind of reprint component, and most of those products didn't exist last year even.
But I think it gets back to the core concept of access to the format and the unique position that Fetchlands are in. All of those reprints, I'm the reprint guy. I'm always advocating reprints, but Fetchlands are such a special circumstance as they are the access to formats such as Modern. And with that new player base, without reprinting Fetchlands, and in all of those products you mentioned, Fetchlands are not in any of them. Nor have they been. And this Secret Lair is the first instance of them reappearing in quite some time. And again, that high price point and limited low availability. So do you feel that formats such as Modern are simply becoming inaccessible to the growing player population and those new players?
Well, I think this gets back to what I hinted at earlier about our different definitions of what it means to need these cards. Fetchlands do have this higher threshold for demand because they are playable in so many formats. Any Commander deck can run Fetchlands. Canadian Highlander decks, which is a format I love, to optimize
Canadian Highlander.
Yeah, great format. To optimize your deck, you require Fetchlands. But outside of decks that care about lands, Fetchlands are cards that optimize decks for people who want to play at the highest levels and wins. They're not strictly necessary. Most of my commander decks are multicolor. They're all blue something for the most part. Don't use Fetchlands just because they aren't necessary. Now, in my decks, so example, I have a Tatiova deck that's blue-green. That one plays a bunch of Fetchlands because it's a lands deck where I can do things with those. So for most of our player population, and one thing I want to right size is the online population, the people who talk on Reddit, who are active in the Twitter community, who watch our videos, tend to be on the more enfranchised side of things. They know what it means to optimize a deck. They know what it means for a modern deck to be optimized with the correct number and type of fetch lands. Those are the type of people who are going to talk about the split between the blue-white fetch land and the blue-green fetch land when they're a mono-blue deck. For most of the player population, it's more about these are the cards I have, or this is my commander deck or commander decks. And for the large portion of our population, fetch lands are not necessary. They are necessary to optimize. They're not necessary to just play the game, which is where most of our population is. So I think that's where you're going to see some of the friction between the people who find this not to be a meaningful reprint and the people who are just happy to have this. And that speaks to why this is 5 different fetch lands rather than a set of 4, and we print one for each or something like that. For commander players especially, you only need 1 copy. You can move it between decks. I do that with a number of my cards. I put a little piece of paper and say, this is where my Flooded Strand goes. And I move it between decks. And so for those players, it's actually more meaningful for them to have access to all 5 rather than 4 of 1. So yes, specifically for modern players, specifically for legacy players, vintage players. And again, as I'm going down that list, the player pool gets smaller. They want 4 of access to this. But those players tend to want 4 of access to any card that is in that format that is remotely playable. So they are different needs for different types of players. And anytime you try to balance that one way or the other, you're going to have friction with the other.
Last week, I did a video called The Rising Cost of Magic the Gathering. And I just want to ask you, do you think that Magic the Gathering is getting more expensive to play?
So I'm going to give an answer that will give me a little flack for being a PR answer, but I also believe it's true. And the answer is yes and no. Yeah, I know. The real answer, I believe, is no. But the people who feel that the answer is yes are certainly not wrong. So there are 2 ways to look at it. And there are 2 ways that it affects players. We are making more products than we've ever made before. That is just a fact. We are releasing not only more secret layers, but more booster products, more self-reliant products. We are just releasing more products in a given year. If you are the type of player who wants it all, or who just gets excited about some of these awesome products, it's definitely going to feel more expensive because there are just more things to buy. And that is simply a fact. There are more things to buy, thus it would cost more money. So if you want to partake in all of them, yes, it's definitely going to feel more expensive. But the other thing Magic has going for it now is there are more ways to play, and our products are a little bit more specialized in areas. So what that means is if you play Pauper, Pioneer, Commander, Brawl, whatever, you can kind of right-size your experience based on what you like to play. If you like to play it all, yes, it's going to feel more expensive because there's more to keep up with. But that's not how most people play. For example, there was a really adorable Reddit post, I'm going to say a couple weeks back. I don't remember what people were complaining about or enjoying. It was one of 2. I don't remember if they were complaining or enjoying. But one of the comments was a player who was just like, I just play Uncube, so this doesn't help me at all. And it's like, that type of player No, Magic's not more expensive for someone who likes Uncubed. They've made their purchase for the year. So if you like a certain aspect of Magic Gathering or two different formats, there are more ways to self-select by both product and format now than there was when it was just, we have 4 booster releases and a commander release a year. Good luck to everyone else.
Right.
Now you can kind of pick what best suits you and how you want to play. And I think that sort of self-selection is a far more efficient use of players' dollars. And so in that way, I would say the answer is no.
Okay. Well, I suppose my final question is simply this. Is it ultimately the goal of Wizards of the Coast to reprint Fetchlands in a meaningful way? And do you feel by the end of 2020 they will have done so?
Ooh, you're gonna end on a question that is going to be difficult for me to answer. The difficulty there is simply in a meaningful way. That's going to mean different things to different people. There will be another Fetchlands reprint coming later this year that we alluded to in the announcement. Whether that's meaningful is going to be up to people, especially since we haven't announced what that reprint is. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to beg off that question a little bit, unfortunately.
All right, Blake. Well, thank you so much for coming back to the hot seat, or if you weren't able to sit in the actual hot seat, for logging in and dialing up and answering.
This seat's far less comfortable than the chairs you have there.
Really? Oh, that's great.
Oh,
I really
yes.
love these chairs. I do hope to be able to see you back in them after our current self-isolation period and crisis is over, so that we could talk again about this and more. I want to remind our viewers that, yes, there are many announcements going on with Wizards of the Coast, especially right now, about care for the local game stores that were not a part of this conversation, simply because as we are recording this video, those announcements are happening or will have happened by the time the video is up. And so maybe that, I mean, I would love to have you back for a conversation about that. I don't, we'll see. This is kind of unprecedented territory that we're in, and
so.
I like it. I hope very much our viewers liked it as well. And you began on a rather sweet little note saying, "Don't shoot the messenger" in regards to me. And so I'd like to actually repay that as we close out and say to our audience, don't shoot the messenger in terms of Blake, who has worked very hard behind the scenes to allow a video such as this to even happen. Blake has been one of the biggest advocates for more transparency and more open and honest dialogue to the extent that can be permitted. And if it weren't for him, this video would not have been permitted to occur. And so you may not like his answers, and that is fair. You may have disagreements, and that is definitely more than fair. A disagreement and debate is always encouraged here at Tolarian Community College, but of course, respect is also asked for. And so don't shoot the messenger in that regards. And you've often said, I wish Wizards of the Coast watched your videos. Well, here they sit. And so you have a voice. Leave that voice in the comments of this video. And it is very likely going to be at least read by people who matter. And I think that's progress. And I think that that's something where, even if we are still dissatisfied, each of us, in terms of things such as Fetchlands reprints or availability, that I would rather have a dialogue than none at all. And so I want to thank you, Blake, for fighting on your end of the table for that dialogue to exist.
Well, and thanks for having me on. I just, I want to say that there was a lot of passion around this announcement. And I have always said that the passion is great. We love passion, even when it takes the form of anger, because you know what? The day that Magic's in trouble is when the day that people don't feel passionate about it. And so, even when people are upset about something, it means something to us because it means they care, and it means that they want us to be the best that we can be, and they want Magic to be the best that it can be, and that's a good thing to want, and it's something we can all agree on. So I definitely appreciate that, and I appreciate you for having me on to have this discussion.
We love this game, and it all boils down to all the anger and fervor and demand really comes down to I want to play the game, and that I think speaks volumes as well. Blake, thanks for coming here, and to everyone at home, please stay safe, stay strong, and we're gonna all get through this together.
Didn't I send you back in time to the middle of a dangerous and very lethal explosion?
Yep, burnt my hair clean off, but no matter, I looked pretty good bald. Also, I bought up every copy of Fetchlands that I could get my hands on while I was back in the past. I'm gonna be rich as long as Wizards of the Coast never reprints them in a meaningful way.
You'll be fine.